Last week, we read some parts of Acts, we read some parts of Colossians and Hebrews as well. And so in the book of Acts, we read chapters 20 through 28. And one of the things that is said in chapter 21, it talks about how Paul was captured. Chapter 22 was actually telling us about how he met a lot of multitudes. He had a lot of challenges, but in every one of the challenges, because it was a passing through, God was with him. Like I always say, anytime we're passing through anything, it's a passing through and God is always with us in it. And then when we get to chapter 26, Paul was bold enough to speak to anybody. He was not afraid of speaking the gospel, of telling what he believed in. And even when he was in front of the governor, he spoke the truth. He spoke to the governor like he will speak to anybody. And then in chapter 27, Paul was actually on a ship. And because he was on that ship, the Lord said that the ship would not shipwreck. And that is one thing I always tell people, that when I'm traveling, when I'm flying, I always pray that prayer that because I am on this plane will land, because it's not by my power, it's by the power of the Most High God. And so I always pray that prayer that because I'm in it, it must land, that because I have not finished my assignment yet. And that was exactly what Paul said, that as much as they remain on the boat, that they will be safe. And then when you read further in that chapter 27, when it got to another point, the Lord said they had to leave the boat in order for them to be saved. So the first time they were supposed to remain in the boat, the second time they were supposed to leave the boat. And what that means is that there's always an instruction from God for everything we're going through. Anytime you're going through anything, just ask God for direction, ask God for instruction. And he always gives us instruction for that moment in time. We just need to be sensitive to know what God is saying at that time. And then when we get to chapter 28, we hear Paul say that he has preached the gospel. He himself was now saying it, that he has preached the gospel with boldness and without hindrance, and was not by his power. It was because God was with him. And because God was with him, no man stopped him from preaching the gospel. And then we read the book of Colossians. I'm not going to go into much about that, but just to know that the book of Colossians is just 4 chapters. He addresses the sovereignty of Jesus in our lives. And he also addresses what it means to build a worthy character. What are the characters that is expected as a child of God? If you say you're a believer now, you shouldn't still be doing the things you used to do as an unbeliever. That is what Colossians is telling us. And he also addresses relationships at every level. He addresses relationships between father and mother, between child and daughter, and child and father, mother and father, between siblings, between servants and their leaders and things like that. He addresses relationships on every level. Then we get to Hebrews. We read Hebrews chapter 1 through 4. The book of Hebrews is one book that it actually addresses both believers and unbelievers, and he addresses each and every one of them at their level as well. In chapter 1, he just tells us that we're special in God's eyes, and that whatever we're going through, we should remember that we're special to God. And then in chapter 2, he emphasizes again how special we are to God. It's like God wanted us to hear it like more than once, that you guys are special to me. And then in chapter 3, he talks about Moses and how Moses was actually talking about how God requires loyalty from us as followers, that we should be loyal to God when we say we're following God. And chapter 4 is actually just talking about having rest in God. When I was reading that chapter 4, I was like, wow, as long as you're in God, you should have rest. So most of the time when we start to wonder, how is this going to happen? What is going to happen? We're just bothering ourselves. We should learn to rest in God, because when we rest in God, there is peace. I pray that you have a blessed week and a restful week in the Lord.